Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the head of news for the Cradle. Today, I am joined by content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami. So Karim, let's start today discussing what happened on Sunday when this U.S. airman set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., in what was a very visceral, very extreme form of protest. He died yelling the words, "Free Palestine." Before he set himself on fire, in a very calm and collected manner, he said, "I can no longer be complicit in genocide. What I'm about to do is very extreme, but it's not at all comparable to what Palestinians have been suffering for the past almost 5 months at this point at the hands of their colonizers." And then he does this, and it just reverberates across social media, across the world, really, because, this is not the first time that a protester, than a pro-Palestine, supporter has set themselves on fire. It happened in December when a woman did the same outside the Israeli consulate in Atlanta, draped herself in a Palestinian flag, and self-immolated. But that story was buried. Essentially, you didn't really hear about it. But this one, he was live streaming himself, Bushnell. He's, I really need to just reiterate, this was a U.S. soldier wearing military fatigues. And, I was discussing this earlier this week. I was talking during an interview, and they were asking me, what do you make of this? This is like a suicide. Maybe he could have done more in life or something or other. And, it's such a difficult question to answer because what this man did, he did it in the name of the people who are dying in Gaza, first of all. There's been several smear campaigns already, trying to link this to mental illness. And from what I've read about him, he just sounds like a person who cared, who really cared about what was happening, and who really objected to what the U.S. is doing in supporting Israel. And let's remember, why do I stress that this was a military man wearing military fatigues? Right now in the Red Sea, there's about 7,000 U.S. soldiers. Here in West Asia, there's so many of them. There's thousands and thousands. What are they doing here? They are being asked to lay down their lives for their country. But how does supporting Israel in killing tens of thousands of Palestinians help the United States? How do the Palestinians endanger the United States? As he said, in his video at the end, he says, this is what the ruling class has decided is normal. He's referring to genocide, referring to the genocide of Palestinians. To the ruling class that he's referring to, his life was already worthless, as the life of these thousands and thousands of soldiers here in the Red Sea and everywhere else around the region are worthless. They're just meat for the grinder. So there's just like a level of self-awareness about this in what he does. And, so I saw some people calling this an act of love. And, I don't disagree with that. I think it's more complicated, really, because yes, he ended his life, but he did it to send a message that the media, the journalists, that, the New York Times just got awarded for their brave coverage of the war in Gaza. These are the people who are hiding and who are complicit in what is happening in Palestine. So this man does this, and it's just, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible indeed. And as we saw on social media and on other news outlet away from the U.S. journalism, everybody knew what happened and why he set himself on fire, except for maybe the New York Times, France 24, The Guardian, Reuters, CNN, Washington Post, BBC, Sky News, and many others. They totally ignored why he set himself on fire, which is the basic question a journalist should ask.
Yeah, I mean, it was like he forced them to talk about it. I saw this clip on CNN essentially reading his last words, which was pretty shocking, because how often do you hear the word genocide being spouted in Western media when you're talking about what's happening in Gaza. There's also the fact that what he said when he said, this is nothing compared to what the people of Gaza are living through. Let's remember that the United States supplies Israel with white phosphorus munitions. White phosphorus burns the oxygen around it when it's activated, and it's impossible to put out. And this is being dropped in residential areas. This is being dropped in Lebanon. In southern Lebanon, they dropped white phosphorus multiple times. So yes, he actually does have a point there, because the Palestinians, they know what it's like to be burned alive. For what? For a neo-colonial project that all it seeks to do is create chaos and pursue ethnic nationalist ideal in which, the Israelis deserve everything, including all the pity, and the Palestinians deserve death because they're human animals.
Yeah, and especially that he was in the U.S. Army. And as you mentioned before, that the U.S. Army is they don't fight all of these wars. They do all this to protect the ruling class of the United States, because of course, Yemen, for instance, is in another part of the planet, and the Yemenis and the government never threats the United States, and the logic says that the Yemenis will not attack the United States, and the same with Iraq when they invaded Iraq, and the same with Syria, and the same in Serbia and all these places. But we see U.S. bases, and the U.S. bases are there, and they are the threat, especially in West Asia. As you mentioned, every single country in West Asia, except for a few, like Iran and Lebanon. Of course, in Lebanon they have presence, but they don't have military presence in Lebanon. But the rest, everywhere there's U.S. soldiers, and they are there for the interest of the United States. And they are there to protect Israel, because for Israel, as Joe Biden said, and as the ruling class of the United States often say, that Israel is a U.S. carrier in the region. If Israel got weak, the United States will be weak in the region. So they are there to protect Israel and protect their interest, not to protect their borders or the interest of their people. But they are there just to maintain their control over the world. And they have many locations where they do that. In Asia, they have the biggest base in Japan, where they monitor and try to control Southeast Asia and China. And here in the Middle East, previously it was Iran. Iran was like where the CIA and their bases were to control the region, including Pakistan and the Gulf countries. And after the revolution in 1979, Israel became more important.
So before we move on, yes, I just want to go back to something you said about Yemen, about, what threat does Yemen really pose to the United States in the end? And we had a report in the Cradle last week that is titled "White House Scrambles for Legal Loopholes in Yemen War." And, because the New York Times reported last week that at the White House, the lawyers, the government's lawyers, are scrambling to find legal justification for what they're doing in Yemen, for this campaign of airstrikes, because there hasn't been a war declaration against Yemen, as usual, as is the case in Syria and as in other cases.
Even in Iraq, it's still an operation.
Exactly. It's like an abuse of previous authorities for the use of military force or the war powers resolution. It's just the president of the United States, he's allowed entirely to start wars without, starting wars officially, without congressional approval, without, anything. They just decide to send troops. They send them. They wage war. They bomb cities. They keep bombing Sana'a. They keep bombing Hodeida. And what's the legal justification, But even if there's no legal justification, what are even the ramifications after that? What has been the ramifications in Iraq, legally? Where is George W. Bush? Where's Barack Obama? Where's Donald Trump? They're happily living their lives with so many debts under their names. So with that in mind, let's move on to something that I think is just kind of the perfect analogy for the state of the U.S., on the global stage. and in particular keeping in mind the actions of these U.S. soldiers from Sunday. And it was Joe Biden saying that he expects that a ceasefire deal for Gaza will be reached by next Monday, by March 4th, just before Ramadan. And he's saying this while enjoying a scoop of vanilla ice cream, or at least I imagine it's vanilla. He looks like a man who enjoys vanilla. And just like, the people of Gaza are starving to death. Famine is starting to spread in Gaza. Israeli protesters are blocking the entry of humanitarian aid into the Strip. Between January and February, according to the UN, there's been a drop of 50% in the aid that was entering Gaza. And this is already, what was happening in January, the aid that was entering was already not enough. Now we're seeing half of that. But this man, the leader of the free world, the alleged, leftist, the representative of the United States, says this, in the most insensitive manner. It's just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous this is happening. And more ridiculous than that is that just hours after, Israel comes out and says, well, we don't know what Biden's optimism even comes from. And then Hamas says, we also don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, of course. And when I read the news, it came to my phone as a breaking. Usually if a president of the United States says something, and especially regarding this region, since we are young, we used to hear what the president says to know what will happen to us, because this region is controlled by the United States. But after Biden became president, I simply don't care what he says. I don't know if he says it because he thinks about it, or because he's the president, or because he has the information. He just says stuff. And regarding the ice cream, I don't know what's the point of the ice cream. He likes to link himself to ice cream. If he's talking politics, if he's talking about his wife, every time he mentions ice cream, I don't know why. Maybe people can tell us in the comments why Biden likes to link himself to ice cream. And Biden now represents the United States as it is today, because the United States is weaker than ever. And previously, they were the superiors in military, and they often says, the United States weapons are superior and nobody can beat them. But in short period of time, within these 2-3 years, we saw the war in Ukraine, that the United States weapons were ineffective against Russia. And now we see the Israeli military. So people know Gaza as big as Detroit or Philadelphia. It's not that big. It's not like Ukraine, 600 kilometers squared. It's a small territory.
I think this is like shorter than like a full marathon, Gaza.
Yeah. It's tiny. It's tiny. You can cross all Gaza. Last time I was on Google Earth, I just checking this. You can cross Gaza in bicycle within like 9 minutes. It's tiny, and now after around 6 months, we see the mighty Israeli army couldn't accomplish a clear victory in Gaza. And still, northern Gaza, the first they entered northern Gaza, I think the first month or the first 20 days, but till today, we see that this is in Gaza, they are publishing videos from northern Gaza attacking Israeli soldiers. So I know, and we are all feeling that, and we are all sad. Almost 30,000 people died in Gaza. But militarily, Israel didn't accomplish anything. And I think at the end, Israel will be forced to retreat from these lands, and as if nothing happened, which means militarily they will not win. And the third point, sorry, it took a lot of time. The third point is Yemen. We see the actual U.S. Navy, which they consider the most powerful army in the world. The Americans usually says we have the most powerful 2 armies in the world, the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Army. So we see the U.S. Navy operations in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, they are ineffective. And by time the Yemenis are escalating their attacks against the ships, previously they used to target only Israeli ships or Israeli-linked ships. Then when the US intervened, they started to target US ships, and then the UK, of course, like a little brother, came to aid the US. And by time, people, I don't know if they are watching the Yemeni news, but the Yemeni news and the leader of Yemen, they said that 2 weeks ago, a new weapon entered to the field in the Red Sea. And 4 days ago, they announced that they are now using new weapon in the Red Sea. So we see by time the Yemenis are introducing new things to the battle, if we can name it as a battle, while the US is still bombing the same places, Hodeidah, northern Sana'a, Hodeidah, northern Sana'a. And they are ineffective because by time the firepower and the weapons that the Yemenis are using are increasing, they are not decreasing. To go back to our point, so Biden represents the current U.S. state, the current state of the United States, with a weaker military, with weaker allies, and of course, if you go to China, we see the effectiveness of the Chinese economy on the U.S. hegemony in the world, and of course, we can see the BRICS, the ally between Russia and China, and how they are trying to counter the US dollar by introducing new means of payments, like a counter for SWIFT. And of course, they are buying a lot of gold. And these two countries are, Russia is the biggest country in the world, China is the biggest economy in the world, and they are both pushing to buy gold, which will lead also to other countries to buy gold. And by time their sanctions will be ineffective, and we'll see the US crumbling, and with it, I think Israel will crumble, and many countries, including Taiwan, South Korea, and North Korea, maybe they will realize that the United States is being weaker, and they might, we might see more negotiations between the two, and also Albania and Serbia. And there are many countries in the world that are standing because of the US hegemony, not because they have the right to stand.
Please, I agree with you, Karim. I agree completely. We are seeing the end of what U.S. hegemony, of Western hegemony. I think it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen next because they're not going to go lying down. The West is not going to go lying down. But we have seen it. We have seen in Ukraine the complete failure of the whole spring-summer offensive that didn't go anywhere. Zelensky this week, a few days ago, said only 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died, which is just a ridiculous claim.
Even the US said no, that's not true.
Exactly. So, and then of course, you're talking about the Russian economy. They not only survived becoming the most sanctioned country in the world, they thrived. All of a sudden, why did they thrive? Because the entirety of the global South saw what in the North people still refuse to see. And just to your point about the economic situation in particular, I just want to bring for 1 second, the president of El Salvador a few days ago, he gave this speech at the CPAC conference in the US. And he just, this is not a man that has much of my devotion for many reasons, but I had to appreciate what he said here, which was, the US economy is about to collapse. The US economy is about to collapse because this is a country that prints money out of thin air. That is just, the dollar is not backed up by anything, but the idea that the dollar is strong. And, we're seeing this, again, with what happened with the sanctions, and even with what's happening here. With what's happening with what we're talking about, the army, the way the army is just, or the military prowess, more particularly, is just kind of falling apart, both at home, both here. And this is happening under the watch of a president who is, senile at best. Like, this is an old man who should be allowed to go to a retirement home to live out the last years of his life.
Eating ice cream.
Eating ice cream, as so many other war criminals are doing already in the United States. But he won't. He's getting propped up. He's going to be dragged out for at least 4 more years by the Democrats. And really, actually, as we're recording this, the Democratic primaries are happening in Michigan, a state that is where most of the Arab American population lives, the most Muslims live there. And Biden, it's very unlikely that he's going to get a victory there. And even the Israelis are noticing this. Why do you think Benjamin Netanyahu or Yoav Gallant or so many others, they so openly humiliate U.S. officials? Anthony Blinken has come here more than half a dozen times to Israel. And every time he goes out, not just empty-handed, but having to give a press conference in which he's embarrassed. He comes, he asks for something, and then in the press conference, The Israelis say the complete opposite. Even this thing, with the ice cream and I expect a ceasefire by Monday, the Israelis immediately come out and be like, no, that's really not it. Because they feel emboldened by this. They do feel, well, this is a nation that since its, very short history, has always felt emboldened. They have always felt like the toughest guy in the room. And as you said, Hamas is proving on the ground that this is not the case. And Hezbollah, even through the restraint that they have shown, they are proving that this is not the case. Now, over the past couple of days, we've seen a very marked escalation here in Lebanon. The Israelis bombed the ancient city of Baalbek, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, after Hezbollah downed a $2 million drone. And now, back and forth. They rained down missiles on Mount Meron again. These very important intelligence surveillance base in the north of the occupied territories. There's absolutely no prediction that says Israel can beat Hezbollah. Not from the US, not from Israel, definitely not from anywhere else. Yet the Israelis, they're just moving forward with it, because, they say we want to see Hezbollah be pushed back behind the Litani. But they say, if the Lebanese army or UNIFIL doesn't do it, we'll come in and do it. We'll come in with our troops and our strength and our white phosphorus and our whatever. And this is really where you see the difference between what Israel is and what Lebanon or Palestine are. The latter two, they're nations, they're countries. They have a very long history. They have roots deep into this ground. Israel is a construct. Israel is an idea, is an imagination. And sadly, is a problem. Is a problem for all of us.
Yeah, the logic says that Israel will not win a war against Hezbollah. They couldn't win in 2006, where Hezbollah were like 10,000 fighters. Now Hezbollah, they have more than 100,000, and they have constant supply from Syria and Iran regarding weapons and missiles. But what I'm afraid of is Israel. And since its creation, it's a brutal nation. And if this nation is gonna sink, I think it will try to sink everybody with it, including the United States.
Exactly, I agree.
Because what's happening is that the United States, it's clear, and I'm not defending the United States, although they are supplying them with weapons constantly, but I think the United States really want the war to stop. But Israel is saying no. But in return, the United States can't stop the supply because, as we said, Israel is the most important country in West Asia and in the Middle East, North Africa, to the United States. If Israel loses, the United States will lose a lot. But Israel is not listening to the United States, and if this persists, it will drag the United States with it, as what happened in Yemen. Now, there's reports regarding the UK that the economy is losing due to...
And they're in recession.
Yeah, in the recession due to the ships that are being targeted by...
the UK, who couldn't even send ships to the Red Sea. Both ships broke down.
Yeah, and of course, everybody, when we were young, we studied that the most powerful navy in the world is the UK and blah, blah, blah. Now we're seeing that the UK plus the United States are unable to stop Ansarullah, which is a new government. It's only 8 years old, 9 years old. Ansarullah, they were not in control of Yemen or any parts of Yemen prior to 2015 or the late 2014. So we're seeing this new entity, Ansarullah in Yemen, being able to challenge the United States and the UK Navy. Course.
Yeah, I mean, it's soon enough the EU, because the EU is also going, although they say we are not going to take offensive strikes against Yemen, it's just like defensive. For the ships, we'll have to wait and see if that's the case, and to your point, the head of the Fifth Fleet, of the US Fifth Fleet, gave an interview to Al Monitor a couple of days ago, in which he said, nothing we're doing is deterring the Yemenis. This is, and like the CENTCOM commander, I think, or some other Pentagon official a few days ago, he spoke with 60 Minutes, he said the same thing. You cannot hide reality.
Yeah, we mentioned it, I think, in our first episode. We said that the United States can do anything to the Yemenis. Of course, they can bomb the infrastructure and the capital, but militarily they can't do anything because Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they already bombed everything in Yemen in the last 8 years.
The infrastructure, everything.
Yeah, they bombed everything.
Yeah, so like if anything, what's happening in Gaza, it's so what's happening with Yemen, it's an outcome of a situation that is incredibly similar to what's happening in Gaza. So, what makes Israel think, besides their own, inflated sense of self-aggrandizement, that they can do anything to actually wipe out Hamas or deal with the Palestinian resistance? It's not going to happen.
Well, they don't have any other choice because they tell the people, or they have this in their minds, that they are the superiors, they are the most powerful, and they are the richest country in West Asia. That's why they attract other Jews or other United States citizens, or anybody who likes like the white supremacy, love to go to Israel. So if you don't have this power anymore, and this small group from Hamas came and did all this to Israel, or Hezbollah, which are portrayed as like drug dealers to the West. Yeah, I think the United States or the US citizens thinks about like Mexican cartels with beards. Oh, these guys came and attacked Israel, and Israel can't do anything. So Israel should attack for their own sake, but they can't win. I don't know. Maybe Biden will be will be right. Maybe next Monday we'll see a deal. We don't know.
Maybe a miracle will happen, but I don't know. And like the Israeli, even Netanyahu said, even if there's a ceasefire deal, we're still going to bomb Rafah. We're still going to go in with troops. We're still going to do it. Nothing's going to stop us. He's already telegraphed that, and Rafah is already being hit. Rafah is like it's not like it's all of a sudden this is actually where a humanitarian shelter or anywhere that is safe. There is no safe place in Gaza. There isn't. So I think this is a great place to leave off in the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next week. Please leave a like and subscribe. In the description below, you'll find the articles that we discussed today. And please make sure to follow us on Instagram, on X, on Telegram. For the Cradle News Roundup, my name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami.